Effective school services operate in the context of a well-managed, efficiently administered organization and are supported by a solid fiscal management system. Thus, as future school administrators, it is imperative that we learn and understand our role in fiscal management to contribute to the attainment of the country's goal of quality education. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is LEIGH REBURON and my report is on the concepts of fiscal management in education, particularly on the meaning of fiscal management and the basic issues on financing education. Before we move any further, allow me to present my session objectives. By the end of my report, all of us will be able to be familiarized with the basic components of a fiscal management system and gain a better understanding of the true meaning of fiscal management in the context of education. And lastly, we will all be able to identify and understand the basic issues concerning educational financing. Now let us zero in on the definition of fiscal management. As defined, fiscal management involves the planning, directing, and controlling of financial resources, whether for a company or any public agency or enterprise. In addition, fiscal management is the process of keeping an organization running efficiently within its allotted budget. Though the word fiscal can be sometimes used interchangeably with the word financial, in most cases, fiscal management refers to money management within a government entity or, in our case, educational institution. Now let us draw the line that connects fiscal management and education. Fiscal management in education supports the provision of high-quality learning environments, opportunities, and experiences that recognize the needs of individual students and should work toward the attainment of high level of achievements for all learners. This means that individuals who are involved in fiscal management in schools should understand their role in improving the efficiency of operations in the education sector. Simply put, fiscal management in education includes overseeing the funding for building and grounds, employee salaries, student programs, school supplies, and even technology. Thus, the school administrator is responsible for allocating these funds and keeping accurate records or documents related to these expenditures. School administrators like us can benefit tremendously when we apply modern financial management principles and techniques to make our schools, our colleges, or even our universities operate more smoothly and effectively towards the attainment of our goals and targets through the sound use of our limited resources. We have to remember that fiscal management really matters, especially when we will be running a school. Given limited levels of financial resources and our mission to provide all children with high-quality learning opportunities, making effective and efficient use of our financial resources is crucial for our schools and our students' success. The implementation of the right to education requires funding in order to build schools, pay teachers' salaries and training, and provide teaching materials and others. And having a sound and working knowledge on fiscal management can allow us, teachers and school administrators, to provide the best educational services that our students need and deserve, while at the same time giving our teachers and some of our employees and other school staff the quality of life they are looking for. All of these things are made possible by employing the concepts of fiscal management, which, in its entirety, simply means making good use of the financial resources that are afforded to the schools that we will be managing. In the future, when we become school administrators, it is imperative that we put in place sound fiscal management practices to prevent what we call fiscal crisis. Fiscal crisis, as defined in the literature, is the inability of an institution or organization to bridge a deficit between its expenditure and its revenues. Meaning, schools that are in fiscal crisis tend to spend more than what they have. And that is actually scary and dangerous because it can negatively affect the quality of education that we offer to our learners. The reduction in budget and financial resources will make it harder for the schools to bear the direct cost of education, such as purchasing books and supplies, covering the cost of salary of teachers, maintaining and improving physical infrastructures, and covering cost for educational projects and activities. And as a result, educational outcomes are consequently harmed because the child will not be given the proper opportunities, support, and nurturing environment from the school because of its lack of financial resources. To paint you a clearer picture of what fiscal crisis is, the lack of sound fiscal management direction will lead to fiscal crisis, which in turn limits the operation of the school, decreases the quality of education, and leaves the country with graduates who are mediocre at best. As EDD students, it is but proper that we start involving ourselves in matters like fiscal management. Knowing our roles as fiscal managers can help us pave a better direction for the schools that we will be managing. The primary duty of school administrators as fiscal managers is ensuring that an organization operates within its budget. Fiscal managers and school administrators are charged with the oversight of an institution's revenues and expenditures, including accounting operations, payroll functions, financial report and compliance, and adherence to financial plans. We should also assist the school to spend funds in accordance with the spending plan shown in our strategic plans. Aside from the responsibilities and roles mentioned a while back, we should also ensure that those who control or administer or spend the budget should not only comply with the spending plan, but also show evidence that the expenditure is really part of the priority programs and projects of the institution. Another key responsibility of the school administrator as fiscal manager is the creation of an internal control or an audit group to identify and prevent fraudulent activities by school staff or outsiders manning our financial resources. This means that the budget are spent efficiently to meet organizational targets or aims. Thus, as future school administrators, we have the responsibility to efficiently use the budget that is allocated to our school and safeguard the financial resources to ensure its smooth operation in the future. We should also remember to always use our financial resources and budget judiciously. The term there is judiciously, keeping in mind the principles of honesty, equity, and justice. Now that we have an idea of what fiscal management is and its importance to education, let us have a look at the basic components of fiscal management. The first component of fiscal management is financial planning, or the process of identifying the resources that are needed to implement the strategic plan. A financial plan is similar to the organization's budget because it identifies the revenues and expenses for that year. However, the financial plan usually covers a time period of 2 to 5 years, while the budget is usually a 1-year plan. Another component of fiscal management is what we call budget management, or the system for developing and approving and managing the budget. Each organization or unit or program area is responsible for working with the Chief Executive Officer, or what we call the CEO, and the Chief Financial Officer, or the CFO, to develop or request its budget for the coming year. The budget is approved by the Board of Directors, or the governing body, and the Chief Financial Officer is responsible for monitoring the revenues and expenses for identifying variances from the budget. Cash management is also a component of a fiscal management system. When we speak of cash management, it refers to the system for ensuring that the organization has still sufficient cash to meet its needs. In cash management, employees reconcile and review bank statements and account balances and spendings regularly to ensure the accuracy of the funds available for spending. Having a solid cash management system in place can help ensure that the school's cash flow is still liquid and funds are still available. Another component of fiscal management is the accounting system, or a system that conforms to fiscal policies and procedures approved by the Board of Trustees or Board of Directors of any governing body or educational institution. The accounting system operates with a chart of accounts that matches revenue and expenses to funding resources, organizational units, and tracking the spending and earning of the organization. Payroll is also a basic component of a fiscal management system, where it operates the compensation of employees, which includes documentation of their time and effort through the use of the DTR. A sound fiscal management system should include policies that control hiring, firing, and salary adjustments of its workers. Payroll is necessary to manage the school finances since it accounts for the employees' time off, absences, their advances or their loans, their withholding taxes, and even salary adjustments. Payroll helps the school to track its expenditures in the remuneration of its employees. In the fiscal management system, we also have the term accounts receivable. And when we speak of accounts receivable, this means the system that is used to manage the amounts owed to the organization by its customers. These are payments that our schools or our organizations will be collecting from external agencies as payments for the services that we offer. For example, ISCC is an assessment center of different TESDA programs. We offer our assessment services to those who want to be given national certification for competencies like caregiving, bread and pastry, bookkeeping, and food and beverage services, and so much more. Since we are partnered with TESDA, ISCC initially covers the costs that are needed for different assessments. And after that, TESDA will pay ISCC for the services it offered on their behalf, which is the assessment of these applicants. The payment that we will be collecting from TESDA for our services in the assessment is what we call accounts receivable. On the other hand, we also have the term accounts payable, which refers to the system for managing the amounts paid out to the organization's vendors. Accounts payable usually requires approval of purchase orders for large items, since most of the payments are for big ticket items or spendings. I'll give you an example. In ISCC, after our birthing home facility was erected or built, we needed to have our lying-in equipment like hospital beds, stretchers, drop lights, wheelchairs, and other fixtures that are necessary for the operation of our birthing home clinic. Since we have a memorandum of agreement with one of the medical suppliers in the province, these equipment were delivered to our facility even without payment. The transaction was basically made in the basis of debt or utang, which will then be paid after funds are disbursed by the provincial government of Ilocos Sur. The debt is what we call accounts payable. Another component of fiscal management is purchasing and fixed assets. Fixed assets are long-term assets that a company or a school has purchased and is using for the production of its goods and services. Fixed assets are non-current assets, meaning the assets have a useful life of more than 1 year. Fixed assets include property, plant, and equipment or PP&E and are recorded on the balance sheet. A periodic inventory of assets is necessary to be performed on a regular basis, and depreciation, which is the decline in the value of the asset over time, may be tracked in a system of accounting for fixed assets. Things like service vehicles, lots, and heavy equipment purchased for the school are considered fixed assets and should always be accounted for. Grants management is also part and parcel to a school's fiscal management system. When we speak of a grant, It is an award that is usually financial in nature and is given by the school to an individual or to a group of workers to facilitate a goal or to incentivize a performance. These can include educational loans, research money, scholarships, or paid sabbatical leaves. For schools to not overspend on these perks or grants enjoyed by the employees, they should have a solid grants management system that supports the needs of the employees or workers while capitalizing on their skills to further improve the services of the organization. Cost allocation plan is also a vital component of a fiscal management system. Cost allocation plan is known as the method for allocating revenue and expenses to the organizational divisions or functional areas. The cost allocation plan ensures that each educational program area has a proportionate share of administrative cost or funding from the umbrella organization. In ISCC, we also have a cost allocation plan which distributes our budget to the different academic units, programs, and offices of the school to cover their operational cost or expenses. Financial reporting is required by law for tax purposes, therefore making it a vital component of a fiscal management system of a school. Financial reports depict to stakeholders the financial integrity and creditworthiness of the school. Financial reporting and analysis also provides the school administrators and different stakeholders with the information that they require to make crucial decisions for the direction of the school. Reporting includes internal reports, reports to the board or the governing body, and reports to the grantors and other funding resources regarding the spending that have been done during that fiscal year. Audit is also a crucial aspect of a fiscal management system. In the context of fiscal management, the term audit usually refers to a financial statement audit. A financial audit is an objective examination and evaluation of the financial statement or financial reports of an organization to make sure that the financial records are a fair and accurate representation of the transactions that they claim to represent. The audit can be conducted internally by an employee of the organization or externally by an outside certified public accountant. External audits can include review of both financial statements and the company's internal controls. However, when we speak of internal audits, they serve as a managerial tool to make improvements to processes and internal controls. No matter if it is external or internal audit, these are all vital components in fiscal management systems. Now that we are familiar with the basic components of a fiscal management system, let us look at the issues concerning financing education. The number one issue here is the lack of proper planning when it comes to fiscal management. Schools often spend too heavily on construction and other big-ticket items, and it's primarily because there is a lack of proper planning that some schools experience fiscal crisis. This lack of proper planning often results in heavy drainage of funds, and thus there is serious financial problem and consequences for the school. Another issue in financing education is the presence of unfavorable input-output ratio. Educational sector undertakings or projects are heavily overcapitalized with the result that there is unfavorable input and output ratio. Sometimes, a school can spend so much money and resources to purchase an equipment that only a few individuals can even enjoy. These are often called the white elephant projects, which often leads to wastage of funds with little to no bearing to the attainment of the school's organizational goals. Another issue in financing education is cost of capital. When we speak of cost of capital, it represents the return a company needs to achieve in order to justify the cost of a capital project, such as purchasing a new equipment or constructing a new building. Some of the school programs and projects that we have are not approved by the Board of Trustees of our school because the costs that are needed to jumpstart the project sometimes far outweighs the gains or the returns of that project, or what we call hindi sulit yung gagastusin sa mga programs na ito because the gains are not that significant. Another issue concerning financing education is the problem on surpluses. A surplus is defined as an amount of something left over when requirements have already been met. This also means an excess of production or supply over demand, or simply put, an overproduction of something. In the educational sector, surpluses often come as an increase in enrollment, increase in the number of teachers, and other circumstances that may tilt the equilibrium. This problem in surpluses often lead to problems in budgeting. When we speak of problems in budgeting, it is seen that some of the educational sector undertakings have no serious budgeting system. The budgets are of course prepared, but these are primarily with a view of obtaining these funds from the government. And the budget estimates that are prepared by school administrators are often kept very high, providing for a margin for budget cuts. A decrease in the allocated fund because of a budget cut, coupled with surplus problems, may often become a recipe for disaster. That is why, in reality, usually there is a wide difference between an estimated budget and the actual expenditure of the school. Another problem that may pose as a concern in financing education is the problem on delegation of authority. It is seen that usually there is no delegation of authority in educational organizations or schools with regards to financial planning, budget allocation, and expenditure. When only one person, typically the school administrator, makes all the fiscal planning and management, tendency is that the budget is only limited to what the school administrator knows. This results in mistakes in the use of funds since the priority concerns are not often addressed because the people in the grassroots who know the real concern or the real needs of the schools are not being consulted if there is no proper delegation of authority. Another concern in financing education is the presence of internal audit. Accounts of every educational sector spendings are regularly audited, and the main purpose of the audit is to bring to light the presence of financial irregularities so that these are not committed again and again and again. But in the field of education, internal auditors can sometimes create many problems, and instead of smoothening everything, they try to create complications because of too many paper requirements and many adjustments in the workflow process. Red tapeism also becomes a problem because of internal audits, thus inhibiting funding and implementation of most of the programs of the school. This often forces the individuals being audited to create fraudulent acts such as falsification of documents, forgery, and others. Another area of concern in financing education is the problem on inventory holdings. Having an inventory which keeps track of all the valuable assets owned and used by the school is vital. Without one, it is impossible to know the total value of the school's assets, what the school owns, and to keep track of what goes missing or what gets stolen. Some schools do not have a concrete inventory system, and that leaves the school vulnerable to missing equipment and theft. Yung mga iba nga, pag nag-retire na sila, nag-uuwi na sila ng mga aircons and mga computers if there is no inventory holding in the school. Another area of concern in financing education is the problem of calling reports. One problem which educational sector undertakings quite often face is that of submitting reports to the administration. Each office calls for too many reports, both from the financial as well as the administrative part of the management. And this, for us teachers, becomes very irritating because administrative machinery does not really put to use these reports for which they are called for. Thus, issues of reimbursement occur because of too much paperwork. I actually have an experience with this problem. When I became the research coordinator of the past administration, I was made to create reports on IAP at mga daming mga reports, mga requests, mga ganito ganyan. But at the end of the day, all of the request forms, mga plans that I made were not really put to good use because the research office funds were not really released because these papers were only passed to the administration out of compliance. But since Dr. Arnel Doctolero came to our institution, things have already been different, and we know for a fact that the reports and the requests that we are making in our individual offices really reach the capital. The last issue in financing education is the possible disinvestment policy of the government towards the education sector. We all know that education is allotted the most budget in most countries, and some countries around the world are making a move to apply their disinvestment policies in the education sector. That means that some government leaders are looking into privatization of the educational sectors. However, it is not a sound decision to be implemented in our country because making the education sector privatized will only lead to more bad than good. For one, the government will not be anymore in control of the quality of education if this happens. More so, only students who have sufficient money to pay for their schooling will be educated, making education in the Philippines uninclusive. If the education sector becomes fully privatized, education will become fully proprietary in nature or income generating, destroying the very foundation for which education is held. If the government disinvests in education, education will not anymore be a basic human right, but a commodity only enjoyed by the affluent. And that concludes my report on fiscal management, its importance to the educational sector, and the basic issues concerning financing education. Nawa ay marami po kayong natutunan sa akin. Maraming salamat po for listening. But before I end my slide, allow me to pose a question. Is the leaf's only purpose to fall? Were we born in this world to run a cycle of eat, sleep, work, and then eventually die? Or are we here as future school administrators and fiscal managers to make a difference? With that being said, maraming salamat po. Keep safe and enjoy the rest of the day.